Hello? Um, I don't really like that. Am I live right now? I'm live right now. That's fun. Hello. Where is everyone else?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
God, I really hope my.
Yeah, hopefully it works. We'll see. Um,
Oh,
yeah, that's fine. Okay, okay.
the internet might be bad for like an hour. I have to like live stream this thing.
Right, right.
So you can use my hotspot if you want. Okay. Just it's gonna be bad. Ugh. All right, are these guys joining yet?
I hope so. Hope they join soon.
Yeah, here we go. Here, okay. Here's a mail.
There we go. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, is
Hello?
Mo gonna join?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep,
Yeah,
we can hear
can you
you.
hear us?
Okay.
So I'm assuming the stream is up on YouTube now, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Cool, cool, cool.
Okay, awesome.
We love to see it.
MA equals F. All right, hang on. I'm just gonna check if we're waiting.
Cool, cool.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure if.
Alright, I gotta go get something. I'll be back in like 1 second.
Okay.
It's cringe. All right. Just waiting on Mo. Chat's still being weird. I'm just gonna apologize to everyone who's watching this. I'm hosting the stream and I've got really bad Australian internet, so I apologize if it gets a bit glitchy or something.
It's all good. I'll add for funny moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Alright. Okay, Mo's taking his time to join.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he said he's joining like 5 minutes ago. Sorry, guys, it will just be another few minutes. All right, here's Mo. Okay, here we go.
Awesome. I think.
All right, awesome. All right, now we just have to wait for a May to get back, and then we'll be all good.
Yeah, then we'll be able to start.
Finally.
Cool.
So like my iPad is dead and I'm trying to figure out like a thing to get my dock on. So I'm turning on my PC right now. Just 1 minute.
It's all good.
Okay.
Ooh,
No,
that Mo.
one by. Oh, for God's sake, Mo. Oh, this.
Hey, thanks, Abby. That's sweet. We'll see how it goes. And there's performative.
Oh, Jesus Christ! He's gotta have his dog.
Oh man.
Yeah, I apologize, everyone watching. Give us technical difficulties,
Yeah.
and by technical we mean pro-lifers.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Okay, here comes Mo.
Cool.
Hey, I'm back. What's up, I?
Hey, there we go. Sick.
All right. Now let's just wait for Amaya.
Yeah, cool.
And
Yeah.
also, let's make sure he comes back with a display picture because I don't like empty picture.
Yeah, agreed.
Or turn on the camera. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you either turn on the camera or have a picture. That's how I see it.
That's facts.
All right. It's definitely
Gotta have that camera.
technical issues, so he should be coming soon.
Cool. How many people are watching, by the way? I'm just curious.
Like 15.
Cool.
Yeah, not many.
That's.
I mean, yeah, because it's very rushed.
Yeah.
Right?
Last minute type meme.
Yeah, why is Amaya's at on Instagram cancel McMahon? Jesus Christ.
Oh
What
my
in the
God.
world?
Is he wrong? Is he wrong?
I don't know. McMahon's pretty good. Not the best, but pretty good.
Right.
I'd say Bernard's better.
Based, bro? Yes, sir.
Are you gonna be pro-life and have
That's
internet?
me.
Wait,
That's me.
hold on. I'm trying to figure out how these are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, why are these connected? Whoa.
All right.
All right, here's Amaya. Here it comes.
Okay,
Cool.
bro.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
and
ready to get started?
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Mo, do you want to do like
Cool.
the intro? I feel like you're better at talking and doing this than I am.
Okay, we agreed on pro-life doing opening statements first. I flipped a coin. So Hamea.
Yeah.
All right, hold up. I'm pulling up my opening statement. Okay. So, I will be affirming the pro-life position. I will be prescribing value on a human's hylomorphic identity. Hylomorphic theory attempts to justify distinctions within material by deriving distinctions from immaterial. P1, material can prove material distinctions. P2, an external immaterial force derives distinction. P3, a human halomorphic identity begins a potency for extreme rationality. P4, a fetus has potency for extreme rationality, and therefore has a human halomorphic identity. And the conclusion is a fetus is valuable. That's about it.
Cool.
Bernard, this is where you give your opening statement.
Awesome. Thank you. So P1, we can't justify our stances about reality if our metaphysical stances are flawed. P2, hylomorphism is metaphysically flawed. Therefore, conclusion, we cannot derive our stances about reality from hylomorphism.
Okay, so why is it flawed?
Sure. So, first thing before I go into the contradictions, I just wanted to ask, where do we derive our souls from? Because I understand that's a part of the hylomorphic theory.
The souls they exist from distinction. So because something you would agree that something must provide distinctions, right?
Sure. Like what? Yeah, sure. That distinctions in what regard? Just a quick clarification. I'm just curious.
So two things have to be different from each other in some way.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, so if that's true, can we agree that material cannot provide distinctions?
I would not agree with that assertion. No, I wouldn't agree that material can't provide this. Material just in the sense of just like physical entities, or do you just mean
Yeah,
in your
nothing
sense?
physical. Yeah, nothing physical can provide distinction. That's my premise. Why do you
Okay,
disagree?
then because I think well regarding I do take a more physical stance with reality. So don't see the assertion being substantiated that physical things can't have distinctions on their own. I don't see where that logically follows.
Okay, so everything can be simplified into having electrons and like a very formulaic amount of quarks and stuff if you want to go to there. How can like a formulaic construction of these things provide distinction?
Sure, right. So when we're talking about when these things, whatever entity it might be, let's see, we're talking about the distinction between a shoe and a phone, right? It would just be like what the arrangement of said matter of quark electrons, right, to create whatever substance it actually is.
Okay, so why? Okay, so that's like a flawed or reductive analogy. Let's say gold and silver. Why is gold and silver different from each other?
It would just be the chemical makeup between both, correct?
What is it chemically made out of?
Well, it would just be the atoms that construct gold and the atoms that construct silver.
The thing about atoms is that they are constructed in about the same way. What do you mean? You have to be specific because you have to.
Or I
Yeah.
suppose the I might be using slightly wrong terminology here, but like the molecules that construct these things, when these things are when certain molecules are chemically put together, you do have different types of entities. So I don't see
What
the
wait,
state.
what molecules are you referring to? Because I mean, atoms are all like the same thing. They're distinctified by the protons within the nucleus, and we can get into why that's a flawed way or why that doesn't provide distinction. But I don't know what you mean by the way they chemically combine, because other than that, they're all pretty much
Sure.
identical.
Sure. When we're in regards to things like maybe the periodic table, for example, right? When we're in regards to things like that, there are still distinctions between how certain I'm just going to use the term chemical loosely here. Certain chemicals there are distinct from each other, whether it be the and you know what? Sure, I will assert there that it would be more the makeup of the actual protons and such. But the assertion there would just be because you can tell fundamental distinctions between the protons, electrons, etc., inside of whatever atom it may be. You can definitely tell chemical distinctions between whatever substance it is on its own.
Okay, so protons in the nucleus provide distinction, correct? Is that your assertion?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So there's actually I have something on this. So essentially, right? So
Mhm.
there's like a study in order to make ice cream, right? You have to like condense 10 pounds of milk to make cheese, while 12 pounds of milk to make ice cream, right? So
Okay.
so let's say that we added about like 5 grams of let's say we added 5 grams of sugar into like each pound of milk, and grams are like about grams are huge compared to like what do you call it, like protons. So I did some calculations. There's like atomic mass. So, like there's a thing called Avogadro's number, which is basically So there in proton and hydrogen and what do you call it? Hydrogen? There's I didn't organize this well. Hydrogen. Okay, so 100 grams of sugar variance in protons of milk. Okay, so 5 grams of sugar in the milk can't provide changes of state, while 1 proton from a hydrogen to lithium can provide changes of state. Explain that.
Okay, wait. So just repeat it one more time, just like a one-time sentence there, because there's a little bit of
Okay,
um
so
yeah,
lithium and hydrogen have like a 1 proton difference, while if
sure.
you put like let's say 50 grams of like sugar per like pound of milk, and like that's
Mhm.
probably 10 to the power. I did some calculation. It's probably like 10 to 1.1 times 10 to the power 26th. That's how much larger a gram is than a proton. And how can one
Mhm.
proton like have changes of state, while 10 to the 26th? How can something 10 to the 26th times smaller have changes of state, while 50 grams of sugar cannot?
Well, this is just how things tend to chemically combine, right? We're talking about how a certain substance changes in terms of small matter, right? We can separate certain protons and such and fuse other ones. Obviously, that isn't the most scientific language, but we could separate those things and fuse other ones to create other substances. I don't see how just because one thing being like very minor necessarily like uh necessarily I don't see. Okay, let me phrase this in a much more coherent statement. I don't see how just because you saying, all right, you have a lot of one thing of like whatever substance combining with a lot of another substance, how come then with the minor thing with the proton or whatever, that you see an actual change in substance there? This would just be the difference between heterogeneous mixtures and not necessarily. Actually, no, that's incorrect language there. But the point of what I'm saying is it would just be a much more uh solid combination of things essentially.
Okay, so I mean, here's the thing:
I don't know.
we can infuse physical things with each other. Like sugar cane juice is made out of like infusing sugar with the juice. So, so I mean, we can infuse sugar with stuff. So a chemical reaction could be taking place, and changes of state the change of state could occur. But so while we infuse it with like milk, no like, nothing like the while we infuse it with milk, we can't get like a change of state. Same
I
with
would just
sugarcane.
wait, I would just assert that things on a macro scale don't necessarily have to have the same fundamental properties as something on a micro scale in terms of when you try to combine the two.
Okay, now you've made a assertion that they don't. You have to prove why that the macro level, the stuff don't interact the same as they or the micro level, they don't interact the same as they do in the macro level.
Yeah, sure, totally, right? So when in regards to what we're talking about on macro level, this would just be a macro level physical, like macro level physics in terms of chemical combinations versus micro, right? So just like we can talk about on the micro scale, there are fundamentally different types of reactions in terms of physics and stuff like that. It's the same thing in terms of chemical structures. So this is things that you learn maybe in like chemistry or whatever. And to be fair, my chemistry knowledge is probably not as good as it was when I first learned about this stuff. But in regards to micro level chemistry, here, let me try to pull this stuff up. Um, here, chemical. Yeah, so when people do things, and of course, this is super just come down. But when people do things in whatever lab, whenever scientist does any sort of chemical reaction in a lab, it's under fundamentally different conditions or whatever. When you're trying to change the one substance to another via chemical means on the microscopic scale, and then you get a fundamentally different reaction than the macro scale in terms of when you combine substances. This is a truth. I don't necessarily see how you could deny this. This is something that's kind of widely accepted in terms of the sciences. Not only even just accepted, like basically true.
Yeah, I don't
So
understand this.
yeah.
I don't understand this like argument. Like, what are you trying to? What's your assertion? Why are they different? Why is the macro level different than the micro level?
Okay, sure. So in terms of okay. In terms of like something on the microscopic scale, we're fundamentally taking like whatever item it might be, right? Gold and silver, of course, can't really combine, so whatever.
I'm not talking
When
a
you
combination.
Yeah, sure, you talk about why is there a fundamentally different distinction between the macro and micro scale, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it would probably just be the nature of the microscopic reactions between things versus the macro
Okay, so
reactions
what
between
natures?
things.
What natures? You're just kind of saying the natures of this, natures of that. Why does that nature work like that? Or I mean, no. Why?
Because
What evidence can you show that?
wait a second. Sure, okay. So again, as I'm pretty sure I mentioned this. If it wasn't caught, that's fine. It's my bad. But um, the fundamental things that we experience on the macro scale is fundamentally different than how we change things on the micro scale. These two things are different. This is an absolute fact in science, right? So in chemistry, if I'm trying to whatever it might be, I don't know a good example here, but whatever it might be, when I'm trying to change, I don't know, not change, my bad, I don't want to misinterpret you, but whenever I'm trying to see the distinctions between these two things, if you go to
We
like
got the
any sort of,
camera. Let's go.
yes
No,
sir,
keep
he
going.
did.
Keep going.
Yeah, you're all good. When you're trying to see the differences between like any sort of thing on the macro scale and the micro scale, this isn't just analogous with chemistry. This is analogous with physics, et cetera, et cetera. There is distinctions here that we can see in chemistry as well. This is also like I don't necessarily know how this is being denied. This is generally just a thing that's accepted in terms of the differences between reactions in that capacity.
I mean, okay, so you're saying that it's like pretty well described, but you haven't linked me like a source. And even if you like link me a source, it should like very detailedly go through why exactly the macro level is different or the micro level is different than the macro level. Because you're just kind of saying that it is, and I'm supposed to accept it because it's a fact that you haven't exactly sourced either.
Sure. Okay. So let's pull up. Why? Okay, my bad. My computer's being dumb. Or laptop. Why
Wait, so
do?
let me get this straight. Is abortion unethical because of ice cream?
Yeah.
No, it's part of hylomorphic theory.
Wait. Also, by the way, after
I,
this, I
I
wanted
think
to.
I think the audience is getting a bit confused. I think you might have to sort of explain again in more simple detail the relevance of hylomorphic theory to your abortion stance and what
Because
hylomorphic
I
theory
don't
is.
because I don't want to end up having potential predicated. I'm saying everything is a soul, essentially.
Okay, but
Everything.
like
So
what is the relevance of that to this debate, just for the audience?
So potential is not predicated, essentially.
right. But how does he's basically just asking how does that lead to your pro-life stance? Like how what's the?
Because potential isn't predicated, I can make a potential argument using hylomorphic theory.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So here. So just so I can phrase this correctly when I get this source up for you. The specific question you're asking me is why is the chemical reactive difference on a macro scale than a micro scale? Like that's basically what you're asking, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is. I've never seen anyone contest this premise that hard.
Yeah, it's essentially a performative contradiction.
Oh my god. Jesus.
Yeah, who's playing the game in the back?
I think Isaac is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, blame it on the Australian guy.
Sorry.
All right.
What happened?
Sure. So, okay, here. Okay. Trying to find a specific thing for you, but
I mean, the thing is, even if they're like, I don't think we can really observe something like that micro in order for you to substantiate it. It's like my thing.
this okay. I'm just kind of confused because I don't know. It was just a weird argument, but no, that's all chill. That's all chill.
Right, so you can see like premise one that material can provide material distinctions.
I don't know if I would necessarily I don't know if I would necessarily concede, but I would just say that at the moment, you know, sure, but actually, you know what? Yeah, sure. Because at the time, I cannot give you a rebuttal at this moment in time. However, I do wanna push you on your hylomorphic stance, though. Specifically about the metaphysics regarding it, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, sure.
So the first thing I want to ask, or actually, yeah, I did ask this earlier, and I want to clarify the question a bit. So in terms of hylomorphic theory, for you, when you say a human being's soul, is a part of the substance that is the human, I'm just asking,
Whoa.
where does it
No, keep going. Just a comment.
oh, okay. It's a part of the human. Where does that being get that soul from? So like if I'm a human organism, if I'm a fetus, right? Where do I get that soul from? Like biologically.
That soul, the soul exists for physical distinctions. If material, so you conceded. So let me just like run down how this works, right? So you conceded that material can prove material distinctions, right? So if material can't prove material distinctions, something must prove material distinctions, and that's why souls have to exist. Or did like souls might seem like kind of a weird misleading term, but if material can't prove material distinctions, then immaterial or some other force has to. So that's why souls have to exist, and they just exist. They're like why physical. They're like why material exists. They just exist.
Whoa, wait a second, right? Wait a second, real quick, right? So I'm asking specifically about your hylomorphic stance, right? So in regards to the biological nature of human beings, I'm just asking, where do we derive these souls from? Like what? Because I'm wondering if you share the same idea as Aristotle. I'm wondering if you share his same conception of it.
IQ's like kind of like a variation, I guess. I don't know. I kind of made it up by myself a little bit because I don't understand most articles. But I mean, they have to exist with material. It's not just a human that provides soul. My T-shirt is a soul. Like this laptop is a soul. Everything has to be a soul. And if everything else has to be a soul, then a human also has to be a soul.
Sure. Okay. So I was just asking because Aristotle believes that the soul comes from the human sperm, right? Male sperm. I was wondering if you follow that same line of thought. That that's how it's
No,
passed
they
down.
have to
Human
be.
soul
They have to be different souls. They have to be different souls because they're two different physical things. Therefore, they have to be two different physical souls.
So wait. Okay. So are they when a being is made a conception, right? When a being is made a conception, what is that the creation of the potentiality for the soul to exist at that point? Is that where it starts for you?
No, okay. So this is just let me explain holomorphic theory so like we get a better understanding. So holomorphic theory
Sure,
states
for
that
you.
everything material must have immaterial. Material can exist without immaterial. Immaterial can't exist without material. They're halves of a whole. If material can't prove distinctions, distinctions exist, then immaterial must provide distinctions. It's like so that those have to happen. So if those have to happen, then humans must have immaterial because everything else must have immaterial. And like potential, I mean, I just find humans immaterial valuable because they have the potential for subjective experience, essentially.
Okay, so here now I can. Okay, so
Or like not
all
just
right, sure.
potential, like
So
developing potential.
yeah, sure. Let's just go right into this type of paradox, right? So you agree that the soul and the matter as, or what was it? Yeah, the soul and the matter, I think he defines it as. Do you agree that those two things are constituents of the same one thing, right?
I mean, I don't know what you mean by that, but they exist together.
They make up one substance.
No,
So like,
both of them make up something. Yes.
okay, cool, 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 cool. So then in that regard, right? Would you, okay, I'm wondering, okay, firstly, you would then have to agree that the soul and the human substance are not numerically identical, correct?
Why would I have to do that?
Because if it's a constituent of the same part, if these two things are constituents of the same part, then that means one by itself is not the same, correct?
No, one can't exist without the other. So you can't try to isolate one. That's not possible. Because
Whoa, wait,
if we
okay.
just
So I'm okay. So in regards to the soul and the matter, whatever it makes it up, then, right? All I'm saying is that means that it cannot be one of, like, the thing has to be. It can't just be one of the things, right? It has to be a constituent of both.
constituent of, but I mean, okay, so material, if immaterial exists to create distinction and nothing can exist without distinction, then a material can't just exist.
I'm just
Right.
asking, are they numerically identical? That's like, I'm just asking, is the soul and the human substance numerically identical?
Again, you can't isolate them. That's my contention. You can't isolate them. They exist together.
Wait, that's fine. I'm just asking if they're the same thing. So for you to say that you can't isolate them doesn't negate what I'm asking. All it is reaffirming that these two things are not the same. The soul nor the matter are not the same thing as the human substance.
No, the soul and the matter make up the human substance. It's just,
That's
I
that
mean,
that okay. I don't think you're okay. I don't think
you're presupposing that material things without distinction can exist, and you have to substantiate why.
I'm okay. Okay. I don't believe I am. All I'm asking is, when we look at the human substance and look at the constituents of what make up the human substance, is one of the constituents the same as both of them combined?
One of the constituents. One can't exist by itself. So okay, even if
That's
I okay,
fine.
let me give a long example. Okay, even if I answer this hypothetical, even if I do this right, this
Well,
has
it's not a
no
hypothetical. It's a question about your metaphysical stance, though, right? It's not a hypothetical. It's a question. I'm not even asserting that they can exist by themselves. I'm asserting that they're not the same thing. Like, one of them is not the same as the both of them. That's all I'm asserting.
one of them is not the same thing as the both of them. Yes, they're both are different things, but it doesn't really matter because in real life we can't isolate one of them, so there's no ethical implications. The question is no ethical implications.
Okay, so firstly, right, in terms of souls, do these things exist in our terms of space-time, or do they exist outside of them?
Oh, what do you mean space time?
Sure. So I'm going to use the term concrete and abstract here. Abstract, I'm going to use to refer to things that exist outside of time, right? Just any immaterial thing that might exist outside of time. And then concrete are things that exist within space-time, right?
Yeah, I think they
So,
would exist within space time.
okay, so they would exist within space-time, right? So they're not abstract then.
Yeah, assuming that we are like presupposing a linear model, then they kind of have to.
Okay, sure. Um, okay, so for the next thing here, right? Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure to word this right in my head. because I
Why do you
kind of have it here as like that.
for some highlight some other comments? Oh no, man! Why'd you turn off your camera?
I'm changing my shirt because it's cold here.
You do
Gotcha.
realize that by you turning off your camera, that's a performative contradiction.
Based, bro. Okay, so you can still hear me though, right? As you change your shirt. Is that a no? I'm gonna take that as a no.
May, are you there? He's not even talking, so.
Cool. Okay, cool.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, he concedes.
All right, awesome.
Whatever.
He's back.
Do-do-do-do. So, quick thing. We're just gonna wait. We're just gonna wait. Okay, cool. So, do you know what a universal and a particular is?
No, what is that?
So, universal is in regards to a thing that is an aspect of anything, right? So like an apple is a particular, it is an actual entity that is here, right? Redness though, the redness of the apple would be a universal in this context, right? So
Can you go into what that is? Like more
yeah,
deeply?
sure. So yeah, sure. So a universal thing would be like and a general ambiguity, like a general ambiguous concept, I guess is the best way to say it. So like redness is a concept, right? However, an apple, like if I had an apple in front of me, this would be a particular, right? But the redness about it would be a universal. Does that make sense? Or
so a universal is an adjective, basically.
no? Okay, here. That was my fault for misexplaining that. Yeah, no, that was my fault for misexplaining that. A red apple would be a particular, but the redness would be a universal. It's just an abstract concept, right? So the redness of like a red apple here would still be a particular, but redness in general would be a universal. Does that make sense?
I mean, so like, is it like a descriptive term? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's just an abstract thing, right? So it's just any abstract thing that we use to make things easier to understand. So like color,
Wait,
most colors would be abstract or universal, I mean. Does that
okay, so are computers abstract because we use them to identify different things?
No, these are particular entities, right? This is in reference to entities. So whatchamacallit? Redness or I guess what's a universal aspect about computers? Let's say you had a specific I'm just going to keep using color because it's the easiest to understand. Let's say you had a specific color on the screen of your computer. That color, the concept of that color would be a universal. However, the computer existing there would be a particular because it exists within space-time, right? It is an existing thing that is actualized in space-time. A universal concept is yes. Okay, so you have a general understanding?
Yeah, so the thing that the universal is like that red, right?
Yes.
Okay, so universal are just kind of descriptive things, and the other thing is just kind of nouns, essentially.
I guess they're just like the thing. They're just a thing existing. That's all that is. A particular is just basically a thing existing. A universal is just the abstract concept of those things, right? So now I'm going to ask you, does the soul exist within space-time or not? Did I ask this earlier?
It does. Yeah,
okay,
it does.
My
it
bad.
does.
Okay, gotcha. So, okay. So I'm just going to get more clarification here. So in terms of Aristotle, right? If you can, if I just want to get clarification. So Aristotle, like thought substantial forms, as you do, were definable things. That these things were definable. However, only universals are definable to him, right? So now we have a contradiction within his writings. A substantial form is both a universal and a particular, which cannot be the case, right? A universal is just an abstract. Okay, so a universal is just an abstract thing. It's not necessarily within space-time. So according under the hylomorphic view, according to Aristotle. So redness, according to Aristotle, would be a thing, just an abstract thing that exists outside of space-time, versus a specific red apple is a thing that exists within space-time.
Wait,
So
why would a descriptive claim? Why would a descriptive claim like red exist outside of space time? And why would, let's say, like something? Okay, something I can see how something existing would have to exist within space time because that's what everything we know is measured in. But how would like redness? How would a descriptive claim be outside of space time?
Sure. So firstly, like I've mentioned before, universals aren't necessarily just descriptive things. They're just abstract entities that don't exist within space-time, right? So
Okay, why don't
redness,
they exist?
that's just how it's just how Aristotle thought these things. It's under the hylomorphic view.
I mean, I don't subscribe. My hylomorphic view is probably like a lot different than how philosophers say it is. So I mean, I don't subscribe to whatever Aristotle says. I didn't even read any of Aristotle's work. I read some other guy's work.
Sure. Okay. So then here's the fun little part, right? Okay. So okay. I'm just making sure to get this next thing up for you.
I mean, hold on. Like, I don't understand the value of those contentions. Like,
Yeah,
here.
don't worry. They'll make sense. I promise they will make sense. It's kind of coming here to form a bigger contention with the main flaw of, I think, also with your hylomorphic dualist take, right? So, hold on. So, this is also why I brought up that question earlier about the distinction between the substance and the form, the soul and the matter of an entity, and the distinction between those two things and the entity itself. This is why I brought this up, and a lot of those things why I brought those things up. The first few things were just to see how much you relate to Aristotle's writing. Now this one is a little bit more in distinction with the contention with you, right?
Hold on, wait.
So
How about the old contention? Why did it's like you haven't given me a reason why universals
okay,
exist in space time?
yeah. So wait, the universals existing outside of space time.
Yeah, why do they exist outside of
Yeah,
space
no,
time?
that was just me seeing how much you relate more to Aristotle's writing.
Okay, so you
If you
can
don't
see that
necessarily,
had nothing to do with my writing. So you can see that has nothing to do with my point, right?
I suppose. I mean, like, sure, that was just more of just seeing where you lie on that spectrum, right? I wouldn't necessarily concede. That was more just clarification. That's a weird way to put it, but okay. So in regards back to the incomplete, like forms themselves are incomplete substances, as you said, and then you need the two things to make up the one substance that is the human, right, or whatever entity it is. So, however, though, we do need a distinction between whatever the entity is and the two things that make up the entity. Here, I'm just saying soul and matter for whatever sake. You
So
did
the
already
distinct.
concede. Okay. You did already concede earlier that there is a distinction between those two things, right? Like the two
I
things
mean,
that
what do you mean distinctions? Immaterial isn't something like we can exactly like quantify. They aren't something physical to have distinctions of. They're just like properties. They're properties of things. You can't have distinctions between something material and like something metaphysical like properties.
I'm really curious. Okay, so you've already mentioned how the material and whatever immaterial thing, with regards here the soul, make up one thing, correct? These two things may not be separable, but they make up one thing, correct?
Yes.
Meaning that one of those two things by themselves is not identical to the individual entity.
Yeah, they're properties of the entity, so they're kind of tied, but they're not exactly like the same
Well,
thing.
they're
So
not just
really,
properties because you need them to make up the thing, right? Under your view,
yeah,
you need them to make up the thing, correct?
yeah, no, properties, we identify properties. Properties stem from physical distinctions. We just identify them.
Okay, wait a second. So the properties we identify come from physical distinctions. Those physical
No, hold on.
distinctions.
No. Let me make this clear. So properties, like the thing about properties is that we might think, oh, we label properties. No, properties come from the immaterial. Okay, so we can identify the immaterial, but we can't exactly like, but we can identify the immaterial, but the immaterial exists just like a material does.
Okay, but a material thing can't exist by itself, correct? Based on
Yes,
your earlier
because it
conventions.
because if it did, then distinction could not exist, and if you think that it still could, then you have the burden of proof. So yeah.
Okay, so immaterial things then, can they exist on their own as well? The immaterial, the thing that makes the distinctions here.
Oh, well, what?
Do immaterial things exist? What I mean, the immaterial that creates the distinction. A material
Eggs.
thing, okay, but it
Oh wait, no,
makes up
I
a
didn't
total.
understand the question. I didn't understand the question. What's the question?
Okay, so you have the material, correct, that cannot be by itself. You have the immaterial, correct, that creates this
Yeah.
distinction. Okay,
Yeah.
so then combining these two things creates the individual substance. A substance cannot exist without both of these things, correct?
Yes, I agreed to this thing like 3 times.
Okay, awesome. So then I don't see why it doesn't logically follow that the individual thing is not the same as the two things that don't make it up individually.
Oh yeah, okay. So I misunderstood this question. Yes, they're different things, but like actually no. By what? How are you quantifying difference between material and immaterial?
Whatever the material thing is and whatever the immaterial thing is, right? And then we have the individual thing. The individual thing is made up by the material and immaterial, right? However, one of these things is not the same as these two things combined.
Yeah, no, that's the premise I agreed to. I don't understand how do we like how do we
Okay,
measure something being
awesome.
different? Hold up, this is like kind of going
Wait,
into
no,
how
that's
do we
what the
measure? How do we measure?
that's
How do
just
you
that's
measure
just like a
differences between material and immaterial? How do you measure differences between immaterial and material?
you've already mentioned that you already mentioned that there's a distinction. You've already and you can't assert that immaterial and material things are the same thing, like metaphysically, if you want to create that distinction. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, they are different, but it's like kind of a weird way you're. Okay, I'm just I agree they're different, but how are you measuring immaterial? How are you measuring distinctions between material and immaterial?
Whatever way you want to. I don't necessarily see how that follows. I'm not even trying I'm just trying to see if these immaterial things are different than the material. That's basically it. And then if they are, these two things are different than the individual substance. That's
Yes.
that's basically all I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, sure.
Now,
Okay, yeah.
okay,
I would
cool,
need
cool.
mode.
Cool. So, do. Okay. So, if it's correct that there is do you believe that this distinct Maya, are you still there? Okay, cool. Just a second.
Yes.
Um, if it's true that there is a difference between these two things, do you believe there's an ontological difference between these things?
What do you mean by ontological difference?
That they're just not numerically identical.
Numerically identical? Yeah, sure. They're not numerically identical.
Okay, awesome. So then if there's a real mind independent difference between A and B, then there's a real A and B here referring to the form and the matter, the thing that creates whatever substance it is, right? Then there is a real distinction there. All right. Now substance change, right? The change in substance is also a real mind independent occurrence. And the correct account of these substantial changes requires a distinction between the form and the matter of an individual substance, right? So therefore, the distinction between the form and the matter of an individual substance is a real distinction, right? These two things are really distinct from each other. Okay, do you accept that?
So you mean the physical and the metaphysical are distinct from each other?
The immaterial and the material, the thing that make up a single substance.
Yeah. So yeah, they're distinct from each other. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay,
Or
okay,
I
they're real.
agree.
Okay, awesome. So there's a real distinction there, right? So
Yes.
if that's the case,
Intuitive distinction.
then
I think you're just measuring by intuitive distinctions. Yes, intuitively distinct.
does intuitive mean like, is there a mind independent distinction between these things?
What do you mean by mind independent?
The nature of an immaterial thing and the nature of the material are ontologically different. These two things are not the same.
Oh no, dude, the nature of a thing is the immaterial. They don't have different natures. The immaterial is the nature of the material. You should have said it like that. Yeah, no, I disagree completely. I thought
So
you
in
were quantifying
terms,
intuitive differences.
okay, so in terms of an individual thing, the two things that make up the one thing, there is not a real distinction between these things, right? Is what you're asserting. There's not like there is the material and the form and the matter, however you want to define it. There's not a difference between the two things that make up the substance. These two things are the same. Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, one, the immaterial is the nature. The immaterial is like the material. So yeah, they're like intuitively different things. They're like two separate things. You can't label them as one thing. They're two separate things. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, wait, real quick. Define form and matter for me before I continue. Like
I
define
don't
how
know what
you
any of
use it.
those are. I don't know any of those are.
Soul and okay, the soul, right? According to the hylomorphic view, using the soul, and then because the soul would be the actuality of life here, right? It would be whatever is the actuality of the life substance. Um, I'm just wondering, since you've already said that the material necessarily needs the immaterial, if there's an actual distinction here, like if the material and the immaterial are the same thing or not, basically, like the
Yeah, I've
form.
answered. They're not. They're not. The immaterial is the nature of the material thing, but the nature is not the same as the material. Therefore, they're distinct things. I've answered this like 5 times. What is this? I don't. I
Okay.
you like.
Okay, awesome. Because every single time I try to go to the next thing, it seems to double back to the form and the matter, or the immaterial and the material are actually not this really distinct, and then we keep on going back. But I'm going to hold you here. There is an actual distinction between these two things. They're not numerically identical. Okay. If that is the case, right? If there is a separation and identity between these two things, right? Then according to the like hylomorphic account of generation and corruption, matter and form must be separable. They literally must be, right? So in generation, matter potentially or matter potentiality actualizes a form, or how do you say a soul, which means the matter precedes the form as it has the potential prior to the
Alex,
actual.
Isaac, stop drinking.
In corruption, matter post exists the form that was destroyed, thereby also requiring a separation. So the matter here, the potential of the actuality of whatever thing, right? The immaterial, I guess, in your context. If the physical state is destroyed, the immaterial that must continue. It post exists in corruption via the hylomorphic view. So
Okay.
under this under the hylomorphic view too, there must be a separation between them if there is a real distinction between the matter and form of the substance.
Okay. So
You must be able to really separate these things.
okay. So material. So are you? What can you say it in simpler terms?
Okay, so material, I'm trying to define it better in the way that you're using them. Um, the immaterial, okay, the potential for a substance to like actualize, right? Whatever it might be. That would be the matter here. So matter is just referring to the potentiality here.
What? No. How is
Wait.
matter anything like potential? Matter is what exists. Matter is material. It's what
Okay, so
exists.
you're gonna. Okay, cool. I'm just trying to figure out best how you use these terms because they are
Oh, should I just
different than the
define
how.
it? Should I just define like everything that I believe in? Because you're attacking like something that isn't mine most of the time.
Well, I'm just trying to understand because you're using the hylomorphic view So I would assume they would understand, like not understand, but use the same hylomorphic stances here. But sure, in regards to the immaterial soul, just how does it relate to the physical for you? Just yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, yeah, it relates as it's the nature of the physical. The nature exists
What do you mean by the
alongside.
nature? What do you mean by the nature?
So like electrons and protons, we can't observe the material distinctions, but we know electrons like do a certain thing, work in a certain way, while protons work in another thing in another way, essentially.
So that would be the okay. Um,
I think
quick
it's
question
really
before.
if hylomorphic dualism is if you can successfully prove that it's true, what relevance is that to the debate?
No potential is being predicated.
So there's no potential. Then where does the value statement?
No, predicated. No, it's not predicated. Potential exists in the way I want it to, essentially.
Okay, cool. So if we do have a real distinction, okay, basically here's a better way to say this. Matter we'll define here as the actualized substance, right? The physical. Form would be the potential, right? But however, these two things cannot exist without one another, according to your viewpoint here.
Okay, potential. Okay, hold on. Why does matter have potential? I don't know. Well, why do you think by matter you mean like physical thing?
I didn't say matter had potential. I said matter will define matter here as the physical thing, according to you. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
And then
So
the form,
what's the thing?
and then the form would be the potentiality.
The form is not the potential. The form is like how the material acts, and we can observe differences from that.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
I'm just
this
okay.
is
I'm
just
trying
kind
to
of
find.
I mean, I've defined this thing like pretty well. I think this is a pretty like formulaic thing. It's
Okay.
kinda,
Okay. The main problem that arises here between both of us here is the definitionally under the hylomorphic view, the paradox that arises is that form and matter, right? The things that create the individual human substance, right? If they're mind independently different, then that means they are capable of being separable. Metaphysically, this would mean that the matter and the form, right, the potentiality and the actuality, however you want to define it, are distinct enough that a human being can be separated and are only combined through accidental unity. Metaphysically, according to this is a paradox under the hylomorphic view, a paradox that exists. If that is the case, then hylomorphism is metaphysically impudent and inaccurate. Therefore, we cannot use it, right?
okay. So it's great that you stated like an actual actual argument at the one. So, but here's the thing. So, I'm defining. I'm not using like the Aristotle or like the most commonly used version of hylomorphic dualism. It's kind of like a variation. It's my own variation. So, like the stuff you're describing, I don't like know what it is. I don't know why you're bringing up potential and actual.
Because
that has nothing to do with my. Hold on, no, listen. That doesn't have anything to do. So, okay, should I let me state my argument like very clearly, and then you attack it from there? Because I think you just kind of read something off a textbook because you don't seem to understand what I'm actually saying. Like I've never mentioned.
Okay. Wait. Amaya, here's the problem. If you have a worldview and you use that worldview, I'm going to think you are going to understand that worldview. If you don't use that worldview in a way that it's understood, because the way you're using hylomorphism is not substantiated by like any philosopher. I literally don't know where you got this from, right? I don't
made
think
it up.
you understand. You made okay. Well, okay, sure. Whoa, wow. Okay. So, firstly, then, why would you name it that? Anyways, okay.
Because it's very similar. It's like very similar.
Well, then, if it's similar, it would have the same. Whoa, if it's similar,
you haven't attacked any of my arguments. You just kind of
okay. I have. I've literally proven. I've literally substantiated why a paradox would exist under the hylomorphic view. If you
Not
were to
mine.
follow it.
It's
Yeah,
not
but
mine.
If,
Like,
Okay.
if you keep changing your metaphysical center, then it's just ad hoc. Every time he attacks it, you just change it.
I had one contention throughout the entire thing. Should I clarify? Like, I think we can move better by if I clarify, and you actually come up with like an argument based on my view, because it's like a misspeaking. I think. Can I
Okay,
clarify?
because that's okay. Wait, real quick. Okay, sure, but we have to understand we've spent a lot of time on multiple subjects. The reason for that was making sure that you understand that, and you agree with me, and you agreed on multiple distinctions: the matter and form here, the real distinction between these two things, and you didn't even contest the separation between these two things. That would literally imply the paradox right there and the accidental unity. And then when I brought up the actual
Okay.
paradox, you then said that these two things are not the same. I need you, if you're not going to agree with these three things, which are the same thing as the original hylomorphic view, I need you to then disagree and somehow substantiate why it's different. If you can't do that, then the paradox arises and there's a problem with hylomorphism.
Okay, I understand. Okay, yeah, okay. So, what's your argument? Now that I've agreed to those premises, what is this paradox? And can you describe it very slowly with easy terms to understand?
Okay, sure. So, if the form, which is the potentiality, and the matter, the physical thing, are fundamentally mind independently distinct, there's a real
What's mind
distinction
independent?
between. That means that it's not a thing out of reason. It's a thing that is an ontological nature between these two things. That's
What's
the
an
reason
ontological
I
nature?
asked earlier.
So is it nature?
Sure. So the
Nature?
reason.
I don't
Okay,
agree.
sure.
The immaterial is the nature. The immaterial is the nature in my view.
Well, okay. Real quick. This is the reason I asked earlier if the matter and form are numeric, or the things that make up the individual substance are numerically identical to one another and numerically identical to the individual substance. You earlier said that they are not, meaning that they would have to have a real distinction ontologically. These two, and nature here just means whatever aspects make up each thing, the immaterial and the material. If you agreed
Okay.
earlier that these two things are not numerically identical, there is an ontological distinction between these two
I
things.
agree that they're like intuitively different, like they're not the same thing. Like in terms of classification, identification, that's where I concede they're not the same thing. We can't classify the reason we can distinctify the classification of the soul and the thing. Or yeah, never mind. Yeah, never mind. Continue. I concede. Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
So do you agree
Yeah,
that they're ontologically different?
Yeah, they're mind independently ontologically different. They have different natures.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm glad. So, if there is a distinction, right? If there's a mind independent distinction, right? Then we've agreed that there's a real distinction between these two things, which is just what we agreed earlier, and the individual substance. Cool, right? So then we go on to the actual paradox here, right? So I'm just gonna bring up my specific syllogism. Okay, awesome, right? So if the substantial form, which here is just the potentiality, right, is really distinct from the matter
And
of the
how is
individual.
substantial form potentiality? Clarify that.
I'm just saying substantial form is defined here as potentiality. Like
Why? That's
like,
not what potential is. That's not what potential is, though. I mean,
I think he's referring to like Aristotelian.
Okay,
definition.
sure. So
just use regular terms.
Okay, so the immaterial, as we defined it earlier, is really distinct, right? If it is really distinct from the, how did we say the physical matter was? We just said matter, correct?
Yeah, we can like classify anything physical as material, anything nature as immaterial.
Okay, sure. If the immaterial is really different than the material, right? If they're really distinct from the matter of really distinct from the individual substance, individually speaking, and the material is wait, I'm just making sure because I got a lot written down. Yeah. And the material is a real metaphysical constituent of the individual substance, then the immaterial, right, cannot be really identical with the individual substance, since there's more to the individual substance than the immaterial alone. That's the first premise here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they're different. They have different identities. Yes.
Sure. Okay. Cool. The immaterial then has to be really distinct from the material of the individual substance, right? And because we've already agreed that one is not identical to one, so the other one cannot be identical to one. So these two things cannot be
No,
identical to
get
one.
him out
right?
of here. I'm joking. Say that again.
So, since there is something more to the individual substance than both the material and the immaterial, right? Like not and, my bad. In regards to the individual substance, there's something more than just taking the material alone, and there's something more than just taking the immaterial alone, right? These are both constituents. Therefore, the immaterial can't be really identical with the individual substance, as we've already stated, right? We're already cool with that conclusion. We've already stated that, right?
Wait, what conclusion? Wait, what
That
conclusion?
the immaterial cannot be really identical with the individual substance.
The immaterial cannot be identical with the. You mean the material?
As you defined it before, the immaterial is the nature of a thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. A nature of a thing can't exist without the thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's what we clarified earlier in terms of the immaterial and the material, right? So the immaterial on its own cannot make up this individual substance without the material, as we've stated here.
Yes, there's not a nature of nothing.
Okay, cool. So here. So then metaphysically speaking, you could, if there is a real distinction ontologically between these two things, the human substance could be separable to two things, and there is only a makeup of accidental unity. This is a problem metaphysically, because this doesn't make sense. You can't separate a human substance to these two separate things, right? The immaterial, if it is ontologically one thing, and the material, if it is ontologically one thing, you could separate the human substance into both of these things. This is where the paradox comes about. Also, this also comes about because oh man, I forgot the specific statement. But basically, there would only be like one type of substance thing here. And neither one of these things should be able to be separated like this. However, they can. This creates a paradox in the hylomorphic view. If there is supposed to be only one individual substance, however, we just have clarified that we have multiple substances that are ontologically numerical to their own selves.
Okay, so because one thing can have two separate identities, then that one thing, then what's like the thing? What's your argument? What's the contention?
If the human substance has two really distinct aspects about it, right? If it has the
Yeah.
two really distinct aspects about it, then metaphysically, it is this thing that is capable of being separable on these two things, right? However, even you yourself have clarified that can't be the case. So we have a paradox here. If these two things are ontologically numerical as individual entities, right, as by themselves, however, they cannot be separated, but they can be separated into their own distinct things. We have a paradox here. We have a mistake. We have something wrong. Meaning your hylomorphic stance falters.
Okay, so here's the thing. So you accept that they can't be. So one premise, I just need you to accept this. I'm going on. I'm kind of going on a tangent. So one thing, you accept that material can't. You accept that we can't separate immaterial and material. We can't distinctify the nature and the thing of the nature. You agree that we can't separate those, right?
I would be fine with separate. I would be fine with that. However, under your own
Okay, hold on.
worldview,
I know your point. I know
Sure.
I know your point, right? So the thing is, if we can't separate them, like sure they are separable in a sense, but we can't separate them, so it doesn't have ethical implications. right?
No,
We
wait,
argue.
wait.
We have philosophy to have ethical implications. If it's not possible, then I don't care about it.
Whoa, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. This isn't a hypothetical. This is a metaphysical aspect about your worldview. I'm not telling you if this was the case. I am saying this is an aspect of the worldview that you adopt. Meaning it is not a hypothetical, it is a contradiction in your worldview.
How is it a contradiction again? I thought it's just something that I had to like. That just makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So as I stated before, we've already agreed to all of the all the things here. The
Yes.
individual substance is
Yeah. No,
not
I agree with
numerically
the thing. How
identical.
is that a contradiction? I
Okay,
don't know.
okay, okay. Whoa, wait. Okay, awesome, 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 awesome. I'm so glad. Okay, cool. If that is the case, then metaphysically, you have one thing that is ontologically different than this thing that makes the combined thing. You can then separate these two things if there's a real distinction. However, we know, you and I both know that's not the case, meaning we have a contradiction.
So you're making the assertion that we can separate them, but we can't in
No,
real
I'm
life.
not making that assertion. No, I'm not making that assertion. I'm saying your worldview, based on every premise you have accepted, you assert that. That is what I'm saying, which isn't the
How?
case. That is why I'm making that contradiction. Okay,
How
okay,
do
we're
I
gonna run
assert
through.
that? No,
Okay,
I
we're
accept the
gonna.
premises. I accept the premises. I just want to know where is this contradiction coming from. I don't understand where this contradiction is coming from. I accept the
Okay,
premises. Just where's this contradiction coming from?
okay, sure. So I'm going to explain again here, right? So since we agreed everything, real distinction, individual, etc., right? Okay.
Yes.
So if that is the case, then ontologically, these two things can be separated. We can. There's a real distinction. You can separate these two things, metaphysically speaking, right? If that is the case, then you can separate the nature and the thing. We know that isn't the case. That's where the contradiction lies, right? Basically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you would have to deny one of the
metaphysically,
premise. Yes.
identities should be separable, but they can't be in this, right? So
Okay. Okay. Wait. We understand what ontological means, right?
yeah, it means like nature, right?
Just an sure, we could just say the aspect of a thing metaphysically, right? So you saying that you can't really do that, right, doesn't mean anything for like what I'm saying. That's the problem, that we can't really do that, right? However, if they're ontologically different things, then you can do that. You've agreed that they're ontologically different, so you can do
Okay.
that.
So
So that's where the
you're
problem
making the
lies.
assertion. So you're kind of presupposing that we should be able to distinctify two separate identities, correct?
I am well, wait. Through your
Yes, you're making.
worldview, sure. Through your worldview, I think so. Yes. Through and based on everything we've agreed upon, yes, there would be. Yeah, I think I would agree.
Okay, so so uh so let's say that we can actually distinctify the material and the immaterial, right? But the we can distinctify them, right? Yeah, that's one of my premises that I accepted, right?
Sure,
You're
because
saying one thing.
there is a real distinction between these two things, as we've also already described, accepted.
So hold up, are you saying that there are two things? Like I'm not understanding this.
I've said okay. Through everything we've said, we've already said that the nature and the thing are two things. Through everything you have
Yes.
accepted so far, that is what that like I'm just critiquing the hylomorphic view. Meaning that you've already accepted that these two things are two things. Not one, but two things that make up one thing.
Oh, so you're saying identity can't have two separate identities making up that identity, correct?
Basically. Basically.
Okay. Okay. So I have like a glass of water that's made up of water and a glass.
Yes.
So there are two
I,
identities making up one identity.
no. Oh no. That's no. Okay. something that would be a lot more analogous would be like I have a glass of water, and under the hylomorphic view, you have the soul of the water that makes the soul of the glass of water that makes up the form, right? And then you have the nature of whatever that glass of water is, and then you have the physical glass of water. That would be more analogous to what I'm saying.
Okay, no, hold up. No, that's not. I mean, so right now we're contesting the premise that two separate identities can make up one identity, right? That's what we're contesting. Can we agree on that?
We're contesting the premise that two separate identities make up one identity. I would say that no, that they're okay. Wait.
What? Okay,
Um,
that's what we're arguing about. That's where our conversation went into. So I mean, I don't understand. Like that's literally what we talked about. Okay,
sure, yeah.
okay, so let's say that a glass of water is two separate identities, the glass and the water. So that,
No,
but we
okay,
can.
okay.
So hold on. First of all, let's define identity. Identity has to be something that can be classified, correct?
Sure, yeah.
So a glass and water can be classified, or like let me try to come up with like a different. I mean, I don't know. So a glass of water can be classified as a glass of water, but the glass and the water are two separate things. So, but then a new identity can still form.
Okay. So, a glass of water, right? You can't separate the water, or else it'll just be a glass. And you can't separate the glass, or else it'll just be water, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in a much more metaphysical scale, we can't separate the nature of a thing and the thing, right? Except in this time, we literally just can't do that, normally speaking. It would make no sense. We normally can't do that, sure, right?
Okay, so that's why it's analogous. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Can you go on to your standard? Because I did a lot of prep for that.
Wait, sure, okay. So, wait, do you concede then that there would be a contradiction? Because at that point, then we've already established that under your hylomorphic view, you can separate that, even though that makes no sense.
I mean, a hylomorphic view, nothing can separate them. Yeah, two inseparable identities can. Okay, so well, okay, yeah, and one more thing. Why are two identities that can't be separated form one identity a contradiction?
Okay, so, okay, how do I explain this? So, would the form of the thing to you, or the nature of a thing, be an identity?
The nature of a thing be identity.
So,
Sure,
like,
we
so,
can
like, so,
identify.
like, okay, so then in these two instances, we're referring to something that doesn't metaphysically make sense to do so, right? So that's the reason why it wouldn't make sense to, in this, like, because we're talking about something that doesn't make sense to do so, to separate these two things, it wouldn't seem to, like, it doesn't seem to logically comprehend to separate the form or nature, however you want to define it, and the actual thing. It
Doesn't
doesn't logically make sense. That's where the contradiction lies, especially under hylomorphic theory, if you're not supposed to be able to do so. Because they're not supposed to be separable, but you can.
Okay, so because identities can normally be separable into two identities, but here it can't. It's a special pleading.
No, no. Okay. I'm just gonna ask you a question, right?
Let's just move
Can
on. I
I
don't.
separate?
Let's just move on. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we should move on.
Okay.
Bernard, do you want to talk about your standard for why the pro-choice position is ethically amoral?
Yes. Okay, sure. So, in regards to interest and in regards to utilitarianism ethics, right? It logically follows that we can justify abortion. Okay. Most of the pro-life stances don't seem to logically take scrutiny. Uh, and yeah, so a fetus, especially before the 18-week mark, there shouldn't be most contention. These are not sentient creatures yet, and they cannot have their interest inflicted upon. Therefore, they don't necessarily have the they don't take up more right to life than the mother has the right to abort them. And then we also combine this with utilitarianism afterwards, after the 18-week mark. And we can see through studies that abortions, like forced births, have been linked, that they may be linked to decreases in well-being in terms of mental health. And yeah, most studies that corroborate this that are pretty solid in that regard. So yeah.
Okay, so fetus can feel pain and pleasure at 18 weeks. That's why it's valuable.
No. Okay. A fetus before the 18-week mark has no interest. Therefore, it cannot have its interest laid upon. Interests defend rights. Or rights defend interests.
Okay.
And then after the 18-week mark, we then use utilitarianism to justify the this portion of having abortions, as it is better for the mother's mental health and such, and because the fetus doesn't necessarily have the same ability for certain complex pleasures and such, it is ethically viable to do
Okay,
so.
so can you say your argument in a syllogism so I don't misrepresent it?
Yeah, sure. So here I'll type it down. So we're gonna have two parts. Okay, we're gonna have a part for the one for the interest view and one for the utilitarianism view. Also wait, give me a quick sec. Because my camera was being set. Okay. So the 18-week view, right? If a fetus has no interest at any point of gestation, it is ethically viable to abort said fetus. Fetuses before 18 weeks do not or are not capable of having interest. Conclusion 1, before 18 weeks, before 18 weeks, under the interest view, it is ethically viable to abort a fetus, right? So that is the first syllogism. The second one, if abortions after 18 weeks lead to a decrease in pleasure for the mother, it is ethically viable to abort the fetus. This is the case, therefore you can abort the fetus. Or I guess whatever term, baby, I don't care what you call it.
Okay, so did you send it?
Oh, did you want me to type it in the thing?
Yeah, I want to make sure I don't miss anything.
Oh, okay. Well, typing it on my phone it'll take too long because my phone is slow. I'll just say it for you, and you can just tell me to slow down and not.
All right, hold on. No, never mind. I got it. I pretty much got it. Okay, so let's go talk
Okay,
about the
cool.
interest view first. So
Sure.
you need both things. So the interest view is really all that matters, but utilitarianism is just kind of like a thing to cancel out the interest view, right?
It's to justify it past the interest view in terms of the third. Just after the 18-week mark, it is ethically viable under utilitarianism to have the abortion. So the
So
interest view.
interest
Yeah,
view is like what defines value. The utilitarianism kind of like supersedes value in a sense, right?
sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll just attack the interest view. Okay, so the interest view. The problem with the interest view is a person in anesthesia does not have interests.
All right. So firstly, this isn't necessarily the case, right? So we could talk about the dispositions of interest, right? So a being, just like when they fall asleep, doesn't necessarily stop having interest. They still have the dispositions of interest, just as when I'm not necessarily thinking about wanting to live all the time. However, I still have the interest in living, right? In the same capacity, thus with a patient under anesthesia, they still have those interests dispositionally that they had before they went under anesthesia, and that's why they still have them after anesthesia as well.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, so that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so essentially proximate capacity, or it's not proximate capacity. It's more of ultimate capacity. But the thing about anesthesia is that people in anesthesia don't have ultimate capacity. They have proximate capacity, meaning they can't recall upon those desires even if they wanted to. So there's a difference between having it there for. So desires are structural. I can send you an encyclopedia or like a study on this. So desires are structural within the brain, and they require actualization. I can right now actualize every one of my desires if I wanted to, right? But a person in anesthesia, even if they wanted to actualize like wanting to live, they can't, right? Because they don't have like the mental structure to actualize it, even if they wanted to. So yeah, that's my contention.
Okay, sure. So, not to straw man here, just so I can understand this as best as possible. Those under anesthesia aren't capable of having said desires, basically, right? Because of the nature of the desires themselves. You said that they were structural, right?
Yeah, so you need to. So it requires like neuron function to recall those desires, but they don't. They just structurally exist, right? The act of having desires is like the neuron firings to have those desires, and they don't exist in anesthesia.
So, okay, this would be strange, right? Because we understand things like implicit memory and stuff like that are capable of of existing under anesthesia. Those
Implicit memory is not desires, and I have another contention with that. But yeah, implicit memory isn't desires.
Well, these okay. Are you trying to draw an equivalence here between the interest and the desires?
No, interests are the same thing as like desires. Really, implicit memory is essentially like reflexes. They're learned behavior. They aren't exactly like desires. So I don't know. You can't desire something implicitly. Implicit memory is like just like throwing a punch if you can. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Here, let me just make sure I think of a good contention here. So firstly, right? Okay, repeat the structural nature of these desires.
Structural. I mean, they exist within the brain. The memories actualize them. What do I have to repeat?
They exist within the brain, and the memories actualize them, correct?
Yes. Or no, the neurons actualize them. So like the brain. Like yeah.
And the neurons actualize them. Okay, cool. Do. My first contention here is when we refer to a thing. Okay. So are you saying that because somebody is under anesthesia that they can't actualize them under that specific point in time?
Yeah, because people under anesthesia are like unconscious, so they can't exactly, consciousness is necessary for actualizing like an experience or a past experience, and that just doesn't happen in anesthesia. So yeah,
Okay.
and we can go into the capacity distinctions, but I've like debated too many people in proximate capacity. It doesn't make sense at the end of the day.
Okay, so firstly, in regards to the distinction here, in regards to the you labeled them the proximity capacities, right? That's
Yes.
referring to the distinct. Yeah, sure. So that's referring to the dispositional interest that I mentioned earlier, correct?
Dispositional is So dispositional is ultimate. Dispositional interest is essentially ultimate. Proximate is different from dispositional because you can't recall upon them, and yeah, so which is why I think the neuro
Proximity is different in disposition because you can't recall upon them. Do you need because the interest view doesn't necessarily posit that just because you can't do it in a specific time doesn't necessitate that you don't have said this disposition to do it at necessarily a later point. So, like for example,
So that's a different
that would be,
argument. That's a different argument, right? So you can see that the dispositional desires don't exist within anesthesia, right?
I suppose, in a conscious sense, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so then, in regards to what I said, the dispositional desires like the interest view doesn't necessarily like a. Well, you just heard the argument that I said. Do you want me to repeat it?
I mean, okay, so dispositional desires don't exist. So what are you going to appeal to give value to a person in anesthesia?
Whoa, wait. Okay, wait. Okay, wait a second. Don't exist. Okay, wait. So, firstly, in regards to this, right? With subjective experience, let's go back to that argument firstly, because I think I have a contention here. Would subjective experience be something that would be good enough for these dispositional desires?
Subjective experience. It's like subjective experience is more of like a new argument. So you're gonna have to appeal to something else. I mean, I don't. This has nothing to do with interests.
I would necessarily disagree. Somebody could. Okay, wait. Somebody who is.
Subjectively experiencing interests, right?
Repeat
Is that
that.
what
I'm
you're trying to
sorry,
say?
I didn't hear.
Subjectively.
I didn't hear you.
So
I didn't
you're
hear
trying
you.
to say that subjectively experiencing interest is valuable now, right?
Well, sure. I never said it wasn't, but yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so this is my new contention. In sleep, you retain subjective experience by dreaming. You don't retain subjective experience in the first 10 minutes of sleep because you are not dreaming, and I have studies to back that up.
Okay. So wait a second. Okay. In terms of the interest. Okay, so here. Because let me type this down. Okay.
So
Okay,
yeah,
wait a
you
second
concede that the pro-choice standard makes no sense. Therefore, we ought to just pretend this contradiction that can't be applied in the real world exists. That's going to be my argument now.
Wait. The contradiction from earlier?
Yeah. So okay, never mind. I'll say this in my closing statement. Go.
Okay, so let's go back to the interest standard here. Here, wait a second.
Nobody else
I'm
is
going
talking.
Actualization of interest anesthesia.
I did a lot of like research on this, so you should just concede.
I don't necessarily know if I will. But anyways. So, Okay, wait. I want to go back to that first argument you made against the dispositional interest real quick, right? So in regards to that, right? How is the actualization of neurons being defined here? Like just like them firing in general?
I mean, okay, no, ignore neurons. Just pretend you need to be conscious to have experiences, correct? Even if it's past, future, present, you need to be conscious to have them experiences, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily think that's the case. I have a study saying you can learn under anesthesia.
Learn. I mean, you can learn through implicit memory, sure, but implicit memory is limited to the stuff you can do. So, for example, you can't actualize memories through implicit memory. Therefore, implicit memories are contingent, or things happening in or like memories are contingent on being conscious. Can we agree?
Memories are okay. Wait. I don't know if you necessarily need to be conscious to have memories.
You need to be conscious. No, memories are structural. Like I said, you need to be conscious to actualize them, and yeah, so. And I'll also substantiate why something structural is bad if we have to go there.
Okay, so firstly, So memories are necessary for like actualizing them, but you need to actualize them at least constantly is what you said. But I'm just asking for having them, like because generally
Structurally,
speaking, sure. In regards to like this is kind of why I asked. Okay,
then a corpse would have memories. Then a corpse would have memories because a corpse has the so structural like the things. They just can't recall upon them or actualize them.
structural. Okay, wait. A network model for human perceptions. Okay, so in terms of the regards of the corpse example you just said, do you think if you could look into the chemical makeup of the brain or whatever, before the brain started decomposing for the memories of whatever it had, right? Do you think you'd be able to find certain things in there such as memories?
So here's essentially like what I'm saying. Okay, so when we have if memories are structural, then a corpse with a brain should have memories. If brain function is not necessary for structural things to exist, a corpse who's brain dead doesn't have like brain function. So therefore, why shouldn't memories exist? So the burden of proof is actually on you. I just framed it in like a way where I had to justify something which is just false.
Okay, sure. In regards to the first contention, to the interest you made, or not interest you made, okay, let's see here. I mean, okay. Implicit memory. So just, all right, I'm just going to clarify a single last time. You're essentially asserting that implicit memories, or not implicit memories, but memories, interests, just those things, right? To be actualized, you need consciousness, basically.
Yeah, that's how do you experience something if you're not conscious?
Right. But if that's okay, wait. We've already clarified that a being that is unconscious can still experience things through the learning with
You
implicit
can
memory.
experience things, yeah, through implicit memory, but you can't actualize desires through implicit memory.
Wait. But the problem that I'm having, okay, now the problem I'm having is if you're going to assert that you need consciousness for certain, like, for whatever desires or whatever things, right? And then I say, okay, well, or not desires, consciousness. I might have said that earlier, sorry. But if you need consciousness for those desires, or for, I keep on messing up my language. If you need consciousness for experience, and then I assert that you don't need consciousness for certain experiences, these two things can't both be true, even if it's under implicit memory.
Okay, so again, I just have to redefine what I mean. Implicit, you can't have consciousness. You can't actualize things through implicit memory, but you can't actualize interest through implicit memory, which is why the interest view is flawed.
Well, just like I don't necessarily. Okay, wait a second. Repeat what you just said. Just so I
So
know it is listening to.
you can learn stuff through implicit memory. You
Mm-hmm.
can do a certain amount of things through implicit memory, but you can't actualize desires through implicit memory.
Okay, sure. So, through implicit. Okay, wait. Here's my necessary problem, though, right? So we understand. Well, okay. I don't know if I was necessarily asserting that you need to actualize those desires under unconsciousness. I don't think I was asserting that. I was simply asserting that you can experience things while being unconscious, because you were
Yeah, sure,
would
you can
necessarily
through
think of
implicit
that.
memory, but again, we're arguing the interest view. Through implicit memory, yes, you can, but not interest. And interest view is what you value.
Yeah, sure, right? However, these interests still exist for the unconscious person. Just because they aren't actualized does not matter to me. They still exist for the person.
So structural. There we go. New argument. You keep switching arguments. Structural, right? Structural memory, structural desires, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so if there's structural desires, then a corpse would have them because they don't require brain function to have, and they exist somewhere within the brain, or like, yeah, you're a materialist, so they exist somewhere within the brain. So then a corpse
Okay,
should
okay,
still
okay.
have those
Okay,
desires.
however, right? We know for said actually wait, no. I would be fine with asserting that certain dead persons have interests. I would be fine with asserting that. I would just say that those dead persons can't actualize them ever again, right? This is fine under the interest view. In fact, I'm pretty sure people like Steinbach very much say that dead persons do have interests that we can very much care about or whatever and choose to do things with. Now, these interests may not be worth as much. However, they still would have interest.
Okay, so yeah, so that you can see that dead persons have interests, correct?
Sure.
So dead people have interests, correct?
Yes.
So
Sure.
should dead people be valuable because you value interests?
Yeah, sure. They may not. Well,
No.
just so we have an understanding. Um, you'd be fine. I would be fine with saying you can value them, but just as maybe, because I take the stance that the more complex the interest, the more it could probably be up for moral standing, right? So a dead person, you probably, and this is how we normally act, right? We probably ought to just respect the dead. This is how we generally act in society because of said interest, right? So in this
Okay, let
capacity,
me give you a hypothetical. So let's say that there's a dead person. Let's say there's
mhm.
two dead people, there's two corpses, two alive people, and they're both tied down to a train. Are you is assuming we're all consequentialists, should you save the two dead people?
I would just say that both of these two interests would not be the same.
Well, I mean, okay, so we can quantify interest now.
Yes.
Okay, how do we assert whose interest? How do we even quantify that?
Yeah, sure. So generally speaking, and this is also a view on how we adopt why it's probably worse to kill humans than like animals, right? The more complex the interests are, the more we put them up for moral standing or whatever. So in this capacity, right, the people I would save would fundamentally just be the two alive people. That would be fine. That's not contradictory in any
So you
capacity.
would save the two alive people, or two
Yes.
dead people. You would save the two dead people.
No, I would save the two alive people.
Okay, no, there's one alive person and two dead people or two corpses. They both
Yes.
have all three of them has interest, like you conceded. You would save the alive person or the two dead corpses.
The alive person because the complex interests are still fundamentally there. Also, even
Okay,
under a
define
utilitarian,
define complex interests and how do we quantify them?
yeah, sure. So, okay, a complex interest here, and I suppose you could say I'm using this loosely, would just be an interest that has more. I'm trying to not use the word complex in the definition. That has more substantial properties in the interest for the
How do we
entity
quantify
versus
that? How do we
others.
quantify
So,
that?
for
How do we
example, I'll show it in an example, right? So, for example, we would probably say that a human being has more complex interest than a cow because of the fact a cow probably has more direct primal, I suppose, interest in regards to what it wants to eat, in regards to where it, wants to sleep, bathroom, etc., versus us, where we have a lot more complex interactions between individuals and a lot of more complex foundations for how we create these interests in the first place.
Okay, so brain function matters in determining interests, correct?
In a way, I mean, compared to a dead
No,
person,
that's your
sure.
assertion. That's your assertion. No,
Whoa,
that's
whoa, whoa,
especially
wait a second, wait a
cheating.
second. I literally use an example with with two things that both had brain functions, right? So like both of these two, like the things that these two beings are capable of like creating with their interest, sure, in terms of brain function. And with a dead person, yes, I would say that because they don't have any dead like function, Yeah, sure. Also, wait, real quick, and I'm not trying to get you. This is just something I want to bring up real quick. That I didn't assert earlier, and you can go back to this one as well. But you said under a consequentialist framework, I would have to save the 2 other dead people. That's not true. I'm a
Yeah, I don't
two-level
know about ethical
utilitarian.
frameworks.
So
Hold up. I don't care about ethical frameworks. Okay,
cool.
so brain function matters in the value. So the person with the more complex interest is more valuable than the person who doesn't have complex interests. Correct?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so you take the one alive person because they have more complex interests. So essentially, you're valuing brain function because brain function correlates with intelligence. Therefore, anesthesia, you don't have brain function. So let's just switch up the
Whoa.
hypothetical. You have,
Amaya,
I have
wait,
sources.
real
I have
quick, real
sources
quick,
that give brain function.
real quick, real quick, real quick. Amaya, real quick, right? So I am just asserting that, and I would definitely say a person under anesthesia still has brain function, right?
They do.
They would
It's
still
just
have
it's just like the same level as animals.
Okay, sure, and that's fine. That's totally fine, right? So,
Okay,
and
so
I would be fine with saying they're just like they're still valuable, right?
okay. So again, so essentially, wait. Okay, so brain function correlates with intelligence. So you Okay, wait. Why is the brain function valuable in asserting like desires, right? So brain function doesn't have to do anything. Hold up. If desires can't be recalled in it, okay. So you value dispositional desires. So how does brain function play a part in dispositional desires?
How does brain function play a part in dispositional desires? Okay, sure. Um, in regards to dispositional desires, right? So, like, I would still
Well,
say
not
that
dispositional, structural desires.
structural. Okay, structural. Um, well, I don't think. Okay, wait a second, wait a second. In regards to the desires that you mentioned at that point, the structural ones, I wouldn't say that these 2 things. Like, I wouldn't say that the brain function is necessary for the structural desire, right? I would, though, assert that the brain function helps on making the interest of the living person far more important here, right?
Okay. Okay. So the past. Wait. Okay. So brain function at the present moment allows for what exactly? Right. What does brain function at the present moment allow for?
Okay. So, in regards to the brain function at the current moment, that dead person is not capable of we know for a fact, having any more desires at all, right? We know
Okay.
this for an absolute fact, right? Versus
Okay.
the alive person, right? We know for a fact that they do. I also, even if I gave you this under the interest view, this wouldn't necessarily. Okay, but anyways, that's a whole different thing. But anyways,
Okay.
yeah. So that would
Okay.
be
So
what I would say.
essentially. Okay. So here's the thing. So you are now appealing to the future of something. A fetus does have the future of desires. So you would have to give moral consideration to the future if that is the contingent premise here,
Okay, sure.
which it
So in
is.
regards Okay, sure. So in regards to the future, right? I could just bring up the time relative like interest account, right? So because a fetus before the 18-week mark, it may have a ton of future, but it has literally no interest, right? So at this point, killing it would be no, it would mean nothing, right? Well, obviously
Okay,
it would
so
mean something
see,
to the
no, you
individual,
you brought
but
up you brought up the future interest as the contingent variable of giving someone value in anesthesia. So if that is the only contingent variable that you can bring up to give value, then that contingent variable is the only thing is like the thing that should be assessed. If nothing, if you can't appeal to
whoa,
anything
whoa,
else,
whoa, wait a minute. Whoa, wait a second. What? I've literally established that I'm using the interest view. So of course I'm going to use the time relative interest account, right? That wouldn't make sense. I'm literally bringing up the fact that a fetus before the 18-week mark, right? Still, even though it has a ton of future, has no interest. So using the fact that it has zero interest times multiple whatever amount of future is still null zero, meaning it would still be fine to abort said fetus.
okay, so it would be fine because it doesn't have interest in the present moment, correct?
Times the future account, sure. Yes. It
Okay,
would
so yeah.
mathematically equal to zero.
Okay. So structural desire. Okay, so let's say that in anesthesia, right? In anesthesia, we can concede that complex desires exist in anesthesia, because of what, brain function?
Sure.
Okay, so when you die, you actually, for the first 10 minutes of death, when you're a corpse, you have skyrocketed brain function. So does that mean his desires are more valuable than, let's say, an alive person?
Well, that would be presupposing those said like that brain function is inherently connected to whatever makes up the interest.
You just said
But
it was. You just said it was. You just
no,
said
no,
that.
no,
You just
no. I
said
don't.
brain
Wait, wait,
function
wait.
plays a part in
Clarification,
interest.
clarification, clarification. Whoa, clarification, right? So what I mean by that is, I mean the like whatever things is in like increasing the brain function is what is the also making up the interest, right? That's what I'm saying, right? So I'm saying that's presupposing that whatever is causing the skyrocketing in the brain function is linked directly to the interest. That's what I'm saying.
Wait, the brain function. Okay, so in normal conditions, you're making the assertion that brain function is linked to interests.
I'm saying certain brain functions and brain states are, yeah, sure.
Okay, substantiate
Certain
that.
ones.
Why?
Wait, yeah, okay, sure. So we do understand that certain structures of the brain, whatever they may be, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Okay, in regards to certain brain states and mental states, right? Some brain states aren't necessarily connected to interest in the same capacity that other ones are. So, reflexive action, right? That's not necessarily connected to interest, right? But that is a certain function of the brain that it does. So in the same capacity, the interest of whatever entity for a dead person doesn't necessarily have to correlate with the thing that makes up the interest.
Okay. Oh wait. So the brain function doesn't have to correlate with the interest.
Certain brain states do, other ones don't.
Okay. How do we decipher that? How do we quantify that? Why are you making the assertion that they don't exist in when the first 10 minutes of death when the brain function skyrockets, but they exist in all normal cases? From where are you making those four
Okay.
assertions?
Okay. So the first question you said, how do we decide that, correct?
Yeah. How do we quantify that?
How do we decide? So let's quantify that. Okay, cool. So firstly, that would just be regarded with neurology. So whatever structures of the brain, for example, the amygdala is directly connected to emotion. This would be a thing directly connected to your interest, right? However, I can't remember what part of the brain is directly correlated with reflexive action that is unconscious. But whatever that is, right, may not necessarily be linked to interest. So it would just be based on neuroscience, whatever we find there. I can't remember all the specifics, of course, off the top of my head, but you
Okay.
understand the example.
So what's the example? Can you restate it?
So something like the amygdala is directly correlated with your interest, right? Because that creates like the emotion, your parts of your emotional state, and also hunger, which is
Amygdala.
also
How do you
energy.
spell that? How do you spell that?
AMY.
AMY.
I think it's. Wait, here. Let me just make sure I'm not misspelling it for you.
Okay. No, I got it. I got it.
AM.
Amy.
Cool,
Amy
cool.
Dugala. Okay. So
Uh,
Amy Dugala.
amygdala is how. Sure, we could go with that one. Sure.
Okay, so amygdala is amygdala correlated with brain function? Let's Google that
Mm-hmm.
because it should be right. It's like I don't know why this specific example would contradict that. Extensive connections with the brainstem. If brainstem
Yes.
has brain function, then you have to demonstrate why death is the contingent variable of death matters. So you're begging the question.
Okay. So, firstly, right, in regards to wait, wait, wait. Give me a quick sec. Um. Okay. Sure. Can you repeat that contention one more time? I'm sorry.
So you're making the assertion that death being the contingent variable changes how that the brainstem is that the brainstem and the emotions or the desires aren't linked. So you have to substantiate why death would be a proper contingent variable on that.
Sure. So after we understand in a dead state, right, there is no more actualization of things, right? So even the brain state of the increase of brain function, whatever that might be, after what did you say, 10 minutes? You said it was like 10 minutes of active like increases of brain function, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever that may be, even in those 10 minutes, we understand for a fact that we can't actualize anything in those if they can't do anything about it, right? And following those 10 minutes, we understand that there is no more anything. There is no more following desires. There's no more anything. Also, I would be fine. Wait, no, actually, that would be a straw man. Never mind. Ignore what I was about to say. But yeah, so that would be my contention, if that made sense. If you want me to clarify,
What
that's fine.
I mean, so you literally just said that brain function when you're dead, it doesn't matter because they're dead, and you're giving a definition of dead and what dead is. But again, that's not encompassing the first 10 minutes. I think that's referring to a more general term of when you're actually decomposing or decomposed. That's not referring to the first 10 minutes of death when your brain function is skyrocketed. So you have to like give me a source on why it's not connected because you can't like logically justify something like this. It's scientific.
Sure. Okay. So first
Can we
thing,
end this? I have to like wake up at 4 tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm gonna end this in like I'd say give you guys 5 more minutes, and then we'll do if you want to do some closing statements. But
Yeah, let's do closing.
I-
Let's do closing. And
I
then we
think
can.
yes,
pretty much-
sure.
I think Nathan has something to say like after it though. But I will do
No.
a mayor's closing statement now. So if you have anything prepared, just say it, or you can just go off the top of your head.
Okay, yeah, let me work on it for like 1 minute. Like
Oh,
the other guy can go first, the Bernard guy. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, my closing statement is this. I believe that I substantially proved why his metaphysical stance doesn't follow. That is the reason why, like, right afterwards, he just said, let's move on, without necessarily specifically saying he contended with it. I believe since I justified that stance pretty well and bringing him along with it, that showed that his metaphysical stance doesn't justify his pro-life position. Also, in terms of the interest view, I felt as if I justified the reason why we can logically follow and deduce this interest view stance. Even in regards to the dead people point, I feel like there is no real reason to substantiate the idea that to the pro-life position. This doesn't logically follow. So yeah, that would be what I say. Although it was a fun debate, I enjoyed it. So yeah.
Me
Okay,
too.
thanks for your participation, Bernard. All right, Amaya, your turn.
Okay, so conceded that material can provide material distinctions after arguing it. My opponent conceded that he brought contentions that had nothing to do with my point. Appealed to authority that I must have accepted a philosophical view. Conceded that dispositional desires don't exist in anesthesia. Conflated dispositional desires with proximate desires. Conflated ultimate with capacity with proximate capacity. Switched stances from actualization to dispositional or to structural. Didn't exactly we didn't get to it, but I don't think there is really a good source for brain function not being correlated with the amygdala in that certain situation. And I think I've highlighted that my opponent's logic is relatively inconsistent when it comes to cases such as anesthesia and stuff like that. And I think even though my standard, I'll admit, was pretty logically or like flawed in a certain sense, I can still make the assertion that it cannot happen in real world situations, and we ought to accept something that at least seems logical but has one point wrong about it than something that has major logical inconsistencies and switching standards a lot. So yeah, it's my closing statement.
All right. Thanks for the participation of both of you. We should do this again sometime. I think Nathan had something to say about the Aristotelian theory of holomorphism. So, Nathan, if you should want to say something.
No, I didn't. I don't know if I want to like. I just kind of wanted to talk to Amaya about it, if Amaya is down, but it doesn't have to be live.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can
Amaya,
talk about it right now.
Holomorphism.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want me to end the broadcast so it's not live?
Oh, you can end the broadcast. We can just talk
Cool.
backstage.
No, I just want to get Amaya's permission. Amaya, do you want to still be broadcasted while we talk about this or not?
Yeah, I mean, sure. If you want, I don't really care. We can talk about it either way.
No, I'm like, don't worry about it. I was like, do you want this broadcast to continue on?
No.
Okay, all good. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Sorry if this was a bit boring, but it's very sort of metaphysical and abstract. But thanks for staying. For those who kept watching, looking forward to more debates in the future. All right, see you guys
Later.
All right.
Hang on.
That was such a fun debate.